Hello guys, this is Kaushik Kumar from SRIRAM Law Academy, and in this video I'm going to be talking about a few legal books that you can read just to get an idea of how the legal system in India has developed, the different kind of obstacles it has faced, and very important cases that have been discussed, and just generally very interesting reads that are related to the field of law. Right. So there are quite a few books of fiction by John Grisham and Michael Connelly and many other American authors who've written quite a few really thrilling and gripping fictional stories about the legal field. But I'm going to be talking about non-fiction books which are completely related to India, because these books are not just interesting reads by itself and are not just very well written, but apart from that, it also gives you an idea about the systems that are being in place in India, how the courts work, and just about a few really eminent personalities in the legal field in India. And the first book that I'm going to be talking about is that of Before Memory Fades by Fali S. Nariman. So it's an autobiography, and he's one of India's most eminent lawyers. So he's a very big name in the Indian field, and he's an expert in the constitutional law and has received many accolades within the country and outside of the country as well in the whole world. So this book is essentially a very frank account of his life stories and the cases that he was involved in. So it gives you an idea of the professionalism that is required in the field and the general nature of how the legal field works, along with many interesting anecdotes and stories about the cases that he was involved in. And since Fali S. Nariman was one of the most eminent jurists in the country, this book is a really interesting read and gives you a lot of different stories which written by himself, gives you his own perspective as well as how things unfolded, right? So that's the first book that I want to talk about. The second book that I'm going to talk about is that of We the People by Nani Palkhivala. Now, Nani Palkhivala is a legend in the Indian field, and he's best known for arguing successfully in the Keshavnanda Bharti case. And he was always a defender of the people's rights and generally for the protection of the constitutional liberties and the rights provided to Indian citizens. And but this book, that is We the People, is more of an analysis of the different public policies that were implemented in India after independence that has resulted in India remaining one of the poorest countries in the world. And this is a very interesting read because his knowledge and his experience in not just the legal field but outside of that as well is extremely great, and his insight into all of these into these kind of public policy related fields is something which is really interesting to read. And the way he writes as well is so good and so witty that his unique writing style makes the whole read very enjoyable, and it also gives you an insight as to how the history of the country and how we got into the current situation that we are in right now. So this is not exactly a book which is related to the field of law, but it is written by one of the most important people in the legal field in India, and hence it's a very important and a very really interesting read to do. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is that of 10 Judgments That Changed India by Zia Modi. So this is more like a case-by-case discussion of 10 different cases which are extremely important as to how the Indian legal sphere has developed and how many individual rights were affected and how those cases actually came about. So this book doesn't just discuss the cases itself, but also gives you a context as to how things were before the case, and also discusses the impact of what the decision in those cases were. And this can give you an idea as to how important the courts play, how important of a role the courts play in a system like India, and how much of an impact one single case can have across the whole country. So it's a very interesting read and kind of gives you an idea as to how many different cases, and some of probably the most important cases in the country's legal history, and how those have turned out and what the context was, what the impact was. And it's just a very generally interesting read to have all this kind of knowledge. The next book that I want to talk about is that of Nani Palkhivala, Courtroom Genius, which is written by Soli Sorabji and Arvind Datta. Now, this book is more about Nani Palkhiwala's life, And like I told you before, Nani Palkhivala, one of the biggest legends in the Indian legal field, his impact on the country's legal system and his impact on the many different cases that he's argued is what is spoken about in this book. And Soli Sorabji and Arvind Datta, both being really top lawyers in their particular fields, their insight as to how Nani Palkhivala has changed the whole system is something which you probably wouldn't get by another author who is not in the field itself. Right? So this book gives you the journey of how Nani Palkhiwala's legal career began and the generally important cases that he did discuss. And it also gives an insight into how Nani Palkhiwala worked, what methods he used, and what style of advocacy that he implemented while he was arguing in court. So it kind of gives you an idea as to how one of the most important personalities in the legal field, how they grew and how they used to function. And this coming from a third party's view who wasn't involved in Nani Palkhiwala's life themselves. So this is kind of an admiration of this person, of Nani Palkhiwala's life and his legacy. So this is again a really good book to read. It's written very well and it's a very interesting read, especially about a person who's had such a huge impact on the legal field. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is that of the Transformative Constitution by Gautam Bhatia. Now, this book is more about the Constitution of India itself. Like I'm sure you all know, the Constitution of India is one of the most important pieces of legal documents that is present in the country. It enshrines so much about the rights, the duties, how the systems and the structures should work, and so much of the country's system and soul is present in the Constitution itself. So in this book, Gautam Bhatia discusses the nature of the Indian Constitution itself, how it has evolved, and also discusses a few important cases which has differently interpreted the Constitution itself and how that has impacted the nature of the Constitution. And also, it's just an admiration of how well the Constitution has been made, just to show how dynamic it is, that it can adapt itself to so many different scenarios with so many different cases which have come in the last 70 years. And that is just it's more of an admiration of the nature of the Constitution itself. So it's a very important read to get an idea as to how the Constitution began, how it's changed from the original the original idea that was envisaged when it did come into place, and how it has changed over the period of time, especially with a lot more cases coming up and how they've differently interpreted these cases. So this is again a very interesting read just to get an idea about the Constitution of India and just to give you a sense of understanding one of the most important legal documents present in the country. Now, the last book that I want to talk about today is that of From the Trenches by Abhishek Manu Singhvi. Now, Abhishek Manu Singhvi is one of the most top lawyers in the country right now. And being a senior advocate in the Supreme Court, he's argued in some of the most important cases which have occurred in the recent past, including that of the Sabrimala temple case, the Cyrus mystery against Tata case, and many other such examples. So this book is written by himself about many such cases which he was involved in, which he felt was really, really important to him and was generally very significant and landmark cases that were being fought in the country. Right? So this book is not very technical and uses very simple language and is a great read even for people who have no idea of the law. So especially for aspiring law students and for aspiring law students like you, this book is it's a very easy book to read because there's not much technical and legal language that's being used. So it makes things a lot easier. And considering Abhishek Manu Singhvi being one of the most top lawyers in the country, his insights onto a lot of cases are really, really useful and gives you an idea as to how the legal field is working here. Now, one thing I want you to remember while reading these books is that these books aren't meant to be read with the purpose of remembering everything, and it's not a question of gaining knowledge regarding particular cases or particular instances or anything relating to the government and the functioning of the legal system. It's more to generally give you an idea as to what the field of law looks like and how it has been shaped in the recent past. So these books should serve you the purpose of generating an interest in the field of law. If you already have it, this is to take your interest to another level and to give you an idea as to how and what you possibly can expect from the legal field. And apart from that, considering these works of literature are talking and discussing legal battles and law related anecdotes, this kind of gives you exposure to material which is legally based and helps you kind of get used to being able to read more and more passages which are related to like the legal field. So that's the additional kind of benefit that you will get by reading these books. So don't read these books with the intention of remembering all of it and getting to the specific knowledge that's being discussed there. It's more about getting an idea as to understanding what the legal field is and how it works, and to expose you to how the legal, what you can expect from the legal field when you do get into it, right? Because a lot of things you do not know right now unless and until you actually get into the field, and these books kind of give you an insight as to how things can be. And you have the additional benefit of actually reading something which is really well written and kind of helps you understand legal comprehension a little better, because these books talked about multiple legal battles and legal cases that have taken place in the courts of India. Right? So this is the mindset that you need to keep while you're trying to read these books. So don't try and overwork yourself or try to remember. And this is not a question of memory or knowledge. It's about getting a feel for the legal field and understanding and being able to read a lot more legal comprehension easily. And these books are really useful because apart from giving you all these benefits, they're generally very well written and very interesting reads as well. So do keep that in mind while you do read these books. And I'll see you guys in the classes. With that, this is me, Kaushik, signing off.